So I'm in the middle of a 20-part series that's being published in a newspaper in Central Texas in Mills County, the Goldthwait Eagle. I'm about halfway through, and they invited me here to speak about that project. When you sit on the porch of our ranch house and look out, you see Mills County, and I spent a lot of time developing a wheat power project there, so I got interested in the history. Goldthwait is one of about 20 towns in Texas that were founded in town sign auctions by the Santa Fe Railroad. And I'll just call the roll of those towns here because I bet some of y'all are from one of these towns. And they were Ballinger, Blum, Crawford, Dyer, Tolthley, Heidenheimer, Hitchcock, Kintner, Colleen, Copperell, McGregor, Moody, Morgan, Pimbleton, Pettibone, Ricker, Rogers, Rosenberg, Sanger, Seeley, Somerville, Temple, and Wallace. So some of them are now very big, and some of them are complete ghost towns. The way this worked is the company placed ads. This is the ad that they placed for Goldthwait. And you see it says Brown County. At that time, Mills County had not been established. Gives the date of the sale, Wednesday, September 2nd, 1885. Speaks in glowing terms, flowing spring waters within the city limits, and so forth, and that was true. The sale that day raised for the company $25,000, and to compare, that's got $1 million today. And in all these other towns, they raised together north of the modern equivalent of $25 million. So this was a big moneymaker for the railroad. This town was named after a Galveston railroad attorney, and his name was George Goldthwait. He married into one of the families that was one of the early backers of the railroad, and he was there at the auction that day. And he stood up at the podium and announced that if the firstborn male child who shall be named after me to receive an engraved silver cup from the railroad and one of these templates. So you can guess what happened. About 8 weeks later, baby boy is born there, and they named him Goldthwait Dexter. Heck of a name to be saddled with. He died in an accident as a teenager, and the silver cup disappeared from history for 140 years until I wrote about it in this newspaper series and described what had happened. And the newspaper has a digital circulation that goes far beyond Texas. The family that had the cup and didn't realize what they had saw the article. They brought the cup back, and it's now at the Both Lake Museum. It finally came out. So this is the earliest known photograph of the town. It's mostly a tent city here, and you can see a road there drilling a water well. The water table was very shallow here. This is a view 3 years later. Railroad depot in the foreground, and their commercial buildings are springing out. They're mostly wood, and just about all of them would burn to the ground in 2 fires that would happen within the next 20 years. Here's a map of the route from about 1890. Headquarters was in Galveston. The western extension ended at San Angelo after going through Goldthwait. At this time, the company had been purchased by the adjacent Topeka and Santa Fe and become a division. That company. So that company had thousands of maps. And in the 60s, and the way that they preserved them was by creating what are called aperture cards. So that's the computer punch card. It has a window in it with a slice of film about the size of a 35 millimeter negative. For those of you who don't remember that, we can project that and recreate the map. Okay. So and these are at the temple, at the barracks in there at the city of Temple, maintains it for us. So this is a little Goldthwait at the engine house, the round table in the workshop. And you'll see 5 tracks going into the engine house. So let's say I read it that. You see the 5 days at the engine house here. This is the engine crew. At this time, the Santa Fe Railroad was the largest and, in fact, the only corporate employer in Goldthwait. This was a really big deal. So this is the science station at Goldthwait. And there's another view of it. And this is the original so-called station wagon. Right. So a kind of car named after that. Here's a third view. This building in 1989 was purchased by somebody for $25,000 and moved to Salado, Texas, and they fixed it up for a house. The address is real easy to remember. It's 575 Lonesome Dove. If you go on Zillow and pull that address in Salado, you'll see photographs of it inside and out, and the Zillow price now for the house, $1.6 million. This is a Sanborn map. Folks are probably familiar with these. They were insurance maps. This one's from the 1890s. The importance of this in my work that I'm fixing to show you is it has the city block numbers. This is a figurative map run as an advertisement in 1903. The pointing away to Denver from a hot summer down in Texas. This is a 1905 company publication called By Texas Numbers that I wanted to mention since we're here working for the land office. The company sponsored a payroll deduction plan, acting as a lender at a time when there was no national mortgage market, urging its employees to buy farmland along the tracks. In this brochure, they estimated farmland in this area could be bought for $5 an acre. They offered to finance it at 8%. Said $10 a month they'll have it paid for in 10 years. So the average paycheck at this time was about $110 a month, $125. So that would have been 10% of a check. It sounds high, but in 1905, there was no income tax. You got to keep everything that you earned. The book has an interesting quote when you open it up, the booklet, to explain its rationale. It says, "In truthful, as a rule, railroad employees do not spend their money as judiciously as employees in other businesses who receive less wages." Meaning, I spent too much on wine, women, and salt. The price, $5 an acre, just to give you a relative value. This same farmland around Goldthwait now, because of its scenic value and deer hunting and so forth, now sells for $5,000 an acre. So its value has escalated times 1,000. So any employee who did this did a really smart thing. This is another brochure. This one's from 1911. Practical information for the farmers of Central West Texas, which was this area. It's got 40-some pages of advice about diversification. You should have cows, you should have pigs, you should have chickens, you should have turkeys, you should sell eggs, and you should move all of the freight on the railroad, right? And so they were kind of trying to build up their clientele. This was published by the Colonization Department. This is another map series. The Southern Division of the railroad was office at Temple, and they did a remodel sometime in the 1950s, and for reasons unknown, and by people who didn't survive long enough to explain, the entire built-in file drawers were completely just simply walled over and disappeared from view. People forgot about it for 75 years. All right? The city remodel starts poking around, post down this sheetrock. Here's all these files perfectly preserved. This example shows depot and cotton platform locations in town. This is the third depot in was lost in 1975 to demolition, run out without a fight by the town. You see that brick platform in front of it. To build this, I got the building records. They ordered 47,000 bricks from Coffeyville, Kansas. They paid 1.5 cents per brick. The railroad, of course, gave free transportation from Coffeyville, so they didn't care. And a lot of those bricks have survived because they were sold at bulk. And my sons at the ranch, when they were small, would build these humongous forts with. This is another example of a map. This one illustrates a personal injury. You can see it shows it the path of the vehicle, the direction of the train. Mrs. Leila Burnett had a unfortunate encounter, but it must not have been too unfortunate because I checked and she'd lived to celebrate her 100th birthday. The obituary noted that she kept driving until she was 93. But I'll bet you she was always careful at this crossing. So this is a map of the water system there. There were springs in the town. The water table was so close to the surface that a lot of people in town had windmills in their backyards, and they lowered the water table. So what the railroad did is it went right beside the springs and across the tracks, and they made a hole that is 25 feet in diameter and 50 feet deep. Now that is a heck of a waterway. They had to lower a boat in it. And that's where they got water for their steam locomotives. And this drawing details the water system. If you go through Goldthwaite today, just where you pull in the towel, on the left you'll see a huge round concrete cover that size. That well is still there. This is a map showing cotton gins and livestock boating facilities. This town, this county, this territory went crazy for cotton, starting at about 1890 to 1925 or so. The price of cotton exploded upward. In World War One, they needed a lot of cotton for uniforms. And our ranch, the rancher is really cotton. He did so well in 1917. He went and got himself his first car, a Model T automobile, and he was so proud of it. He lived in a log cabin, but it had a porch, still up the cabin. He was so proud of that car, he parked it on the front porch. Okay. So here's another drawing. This is for a bulk fuel station, Conoco. All gasoline delivered by rail. You can see the livestock pens now. Go and point some mail in this one, if this pointer works. See this marker right here? It says 313. That is a milepost. And it indicates that this point by rail is 313 miles from Galveston. That 313 sign is still right there in that spot. Now, it's not the same sign, mind you. It's like, George Washington's hatchet. But it's still there. Here's a drawing from those Waldenmer files. It shows dedication or lease of the city, by the city, for a park. Now I want to talk about valuation photos. In World War I, the railroads were nationalized with a promise that they would be given a fair rate of return. After the war, the question becomes, what is that rate? Well, it depends on the value of the asset. And so to value it, the railroad sent a photographer across its entire system, which by that time was $3,000 in Texas, taking very high quality images. So I'm going to show you a few of those images. That's his car there. He was very proud of this car. You're fixing to see in the wall photos. For down by the depot you see there to the right, that is the one that's now the house. Salado. Commercial scene here, the famous cafe. And you see he's riding Block 9, Track 66. So I'd use the Sanborn maps to figure out where is that, and then I can go to that spot. Here is his car, street scene, residential scene. None of this survives. Commercial scene now by the tracks, you see those paper signs. That was their equivalent of billboards. And some of the towns, good or by these photographs, for instance, have, but there are 50 pictures of these billboards. This guy really liked to take pictures. Got a street scene here. You see a windmill. Near every house had a windmill. Street scene here. See all the windmills in the background. Got the street scene. And I'm just want you to be aware of these photos because it's like Google Street View, but 100 years earlier, and you can figure out exactly where it is. And so if you're doing research at any town that the Santa Fe Railroad went through, you need to know about these images, which have all been digitized, by the way, by the Railroad Museum Temple. This is something unusual. You don't see much. It's a view of the backyards, right? I see the laundry hanging. You always see the front of the houses. You never see that. Here's what a Texas backyard looked like in the mid-1920s in a small Central Texas town. Now, you see this house. Pay attention to the half-moon window there under the peak and the little square tower. Now I'm going to jump you forward 100 years. They're standing at the exact same spot. You can see the little window there. Half moon. You can't see the tower. It's still there, but the trees are blocking it. So what I did for y'all, I split around the corner and you'd see the tower there. Isn't that cool? Okay, we're going to do that again. This is downtown. I'm going to jump you forward. What you're going to see is everything is still there, although has false winds now, except the land for groceries. So vacant lot, you ready? Here we go. You can see the vacant lot there, and then you see the false fronts covering the rest of it. Now we're going to go to the opposite end of the block. Weatherby Auto. Okay. Now, I want you to notice this little pooch here. See where the rift pooch is out? And I'm fixing to jump you down. Same vantage point. Boom. You see the little pooch? It's still there. That means that all of this beautiful stuff is still under there for the whole length of the block, but is now covered by all these false fronts. So someday if somebody wanted to go back in any of these towers, these photographs would be a valuable guide for restoration. Let's do it again. Here's a house. Note the square columns. Note the porch low to the ground. Note the little window of the front. You ready? That's it today. I did a sci-fi because the trees block is now a law office in a land tower company. Let's do it again. On the right, that's the Eagle newspaper office. Here's the photographer's call. I want you to pay attention to the high roof line on the Eagle. This newspaper has been published since the 1890s continuously. It's digitized at the Tours of History. Texas History is sponsored by University of North Texas. I believe they have a representative here. I've got all these digitized papers. A guy named Sam Duncan ranch it outside of Gulfway went to a lot of trouble to make that happen. So the newspaper location is still right here. All right, you ready to jump? Boom. See, it says Gulfway Eagle. Oh, and note the high roof line, the false front. We know what is hiding now. To the left here is the courthouse. We're right across the courthouse. Now, to conclude, this is a different map series. These are the valuation maps. The Interstate Commerce Commission required these. A station map like this is on a scale of 1 inch to 100 feet. Most of the line is at a scale of 1 inch to 400 feet. And what that means for 3,000 miles in Texas is that if you printed these maps out and would join them side by side at the match lines, like you're supposed to, just the line of paper would be more than a half a mile long. These are invaluable for researching how things work, and they're unusual in the sense that they're what I would call the living map. The past slide here, this is a tabulation that you find in the upper right corner of the map, and this one covers about, nearly 50 years of what they were doing. So I just want to conclude and say these are really valuable resources, and whoever says that time travel is not possible doesn't know about the valuation for us. Thanks.
question?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Osborn. I really appreciate it. I love the stories and am interested if you know anything more about the family that had the silver cup. Were they related to the family, and where were they still in Texas or were they somewhere else?
So they were out of state, and it happened recently, and I have an appointment at the museum that's Friday afternoon. I want to call to see it and get the information. So it has to wait to see them. So. Okay, thanks, y'all.